I know, we did.
And so now we're having another time to talk about it. I'm Kelly in Seattle, the liberal non-theist.
And I'm Heidi in Colorado, and I'm the conservative Christian.
Mm-hmm. And I reached out to you, Heidi, saying we should do a phone chat after the midterms and practice celebrating each other's, joy around what happened, because I was aware that I'm really only talking to people in my camp about what went down, what we got, what we didn't get. And I suspect that's probably same on the other side of the aisle. And I thought it might be a little edgy to practice listening to each other and showing empathy for each other's relief or disappointment about what happened. So what do you think?
Well, I think that's a great idea for us to be able to maintain a connection despite everything else that is so divisive and crazy going on in our country, that you help keep me grounded. You help keep me looking in your eyes and saying, okay, these people that I see that I think are my enemies on the other side, no, they're not, because Kelly's my friend.
Right. I have a very similar experience. So yes, I enjoy getting a reality check, putting a human face to the other side.
Exactly.
So with that, tell me about where you're at after the midterms. What are you celebrating? What are you disappointed about?
Well, I was happy that the Republicans were able to keep the control over the Senate. That is important to me, especially for the election of Supreme Court justices. And then I had to figure out what it meant practically that the Democrats have control of the House, to try to figure out, okay, so how does that affect policy, and what roadblocks could that create for certain policies that Trump is trying to put through, or looking at it from your side, how does this shift the balance of power, perhaps in the Democrats' favor? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there were areas I was really excited about. I was super excited that Cruz was able to win in Texas. My sister lives in Texas, and so she and I were like, woohoo, and texting each other happiness about that. I was sad for my own state here of Colorado because I voted for Stapleton, but as I was sad that it doesn't seem like he did a really good job of campaigning, and of there was a lot of press from Jared Polis about Stapleton, all the bad things about Stapleton. And so I didn't think he did a good enough job of saying who he is and why you should vote for him. There was just a lot of press about why you shouldn't. And so I was disappointed with that. I think it could have turned out differently. But then I haven't lived in Colorado all that long, so I don't really know the voter base well enough here to know if it could have even been tipped. So
remind me, what was Stapleton running for? I'm not familiar.
He was running for governor here.
Got it. Okay. And he lost.
Right. And he lost. And Jared Polis is the first openly gay governor to be voted into office. So there was a lot of celebration around that on the liberal side, and some sadness on my side, because my views on that. So I was super excited to hear that so many women have been voted into office. I think that's really cool. Very, very happy about that. So there is a lot of wins for sure, I think, on both sides. So tell me about you. Where are you with all of it?
Right. I too feel really happy about all the women voted in, and women of color, and our first Muslim representatives. And I feel like the more diversity in politics, the more likely it's going to represent our diverse country.
Mhm.
And so super celebrating that. Like in Texas, all 19 Black women judges who ran got elected. That was huge. So huge. And like celebrating the increased voter turnout. Like that is what makes America great, is that we participate in our election process. And so I think I read that like in Texas, there was like 500% increase in the young voter turnout.
Yeah.
And I was disappointed that Beto didn't win. But, you know, it was a long shot anyway. Texas is red.
Right.
And he did really well in a state that is historically red. And he did really well given that he ran a positive campaign. He wasn't doing attack ads, you know. So all of that is, I'm finding, you know, something to celebrate around that, even though it didn't have the outcome that I wanted, you know.
Good.
Obviously, I would have loved for Democrats to take both houses in Congress. I'm happy we got at least the House. And I'm really curious, though, like what the tone of politics is going to be going forward. You know, I have some concern. Like, I didn't like the tone when it was all Republican. I felt like it's been a little, I think because of Trump's style, the hate and rhetoric that's out there in general out there is really increased. And I'm also really trying to look at the shadow on my side of the aisle and see how we contribute to that as well.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So it's like, it's measured happiness around taking the House, because during the Obama years, like not a lot got done when, you know, there was division in government. And so I'm just curious. And I really would not prefer to see Trump's aggression amplified. But I don't want them not to take action, hold him accountable for finances, just to avoid his aggression. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I feel happy about some things and wary and concerned about others. And I just keep coming back to the importance of building bridges through relationship with people across the aisle. Like, if I find myself getting really agitated by what I read going on nationally, I try to bring my focus back to what I can directly impact, and that's how I communicate with people. So
that's right. Yeah, I posted a little video the night that the results on the election night, the night that we were waiting for the results to come in, and just encouraged people to, no matter how this turns out, you have a choice to speak life. You have the choice. You have the choice not to rub it in other people's faces, whatever your victories are. Mm-hmm. And you have a choice to ask questions and listen well. And, you know, I think for many of us, our knee-jerk reaction with these kinds of things, and I think this is why the whole political landscape is so divisive, is that it brings out a lot of fear in us about our values being upheld or not being upheld. And when we sense that fear, I think it brings out the very worst in our communication styles. You know, because it's very different when you trust someone. You're able to speak in kind ways. You're able to listen well, because you're in your brain chemistry. You can use your prefrontal cortex. Like, your limbic system doesn't even have to fire because you're not afraid. Mm-hmm. So then you can process, you can slow it down, you can listen well, you can use eye contact. But when we get afraid and we let that overtake us, then I think that whole primitive communication system in our brains kicks in. And that's when you hear the aggression and the vitriol and all of that. So maybe a positive is that if the Democrats feel like they have a little bit more power now, at least by having some power in the House, then maybe it's going to help that fear to subside a little bit, in that, hey, we have a voice. We are able to have a voice here. We're able to stop things from happening that we don't want to have happen. What do you think about that?
I think that's quite a good observation. I mean, let's say I hope that that's the result, that it will help lessen the fear when it feels like there's a little more balance of power. Certainly when one person or one group feels like they have no control in the situation and no power to affect the outcome, yes, there's going to be more fear and reactivity involved. And I'm continually struck by the ongoing message I'm hearing whenever people are interviewed from either side of the aisle, just your average American. Like, how many people say they genuinely fear members of the other side? Conservatives fearing liberals, seeing them as violent and angry, and liberals fearing conservatives, seeing that their intolerance is making their chosen lifestyle or way of living that they didn't choose, like their race. Like, nobody's chosen their race, but
Right.
like seeing that the attitude on the other side of the aisle is causing a sense of unsafety for them. Like, that goes on and on and on. And so I just keep coming back to the importance of humanizing the other side so that we can calm that fear,
Right.
and making connections with the other side to
Yes.
calm that fear.
I totally agree. And I think it has to be very intentional, because the media is showing the extremes on both sides. I mean, you've got the folks that showed up at one of the Fox News reporters' door and were, his wife is hiding in there in the pantry, and they're shouting stuff outside like, "We know where you sleep at night," and scary stuff that when we see that, I think when we see that played out and the media is showing us all of this, then I think that incites fear as well. I honestly don't have the TV going in my house all the time, because I do feel like most of the stories are pretty negative and are inciting fear in the rest of us Americans. And I don't really want that in my house. I'll go read about it, and I'll try to be balanced in what I read. You and I have worked really hard on that. And even with the midterms, I've worked really hard on trying to read stuff on both sides of the aisle, so that I could have a sense of what's being celebrated as well. But I do think the media is a little out of balance. I think that.
Right. And it's out of balance in that we in our bubbles are shown predominantly things that reinforce our bubbles, right? So did I see that news clip that you referred to? No. But what I did see was the undoctored video of the CNN journalist who was accused of assaulting a White House intern, which was so ridiculous because he didn't, she tried to take his mic and he just held his hand up like, "Don't take my mic," right? There was no like whacking or anything. And that's being sold to the right as a liberal journal being nasty and assaulting a female intern. So it's just like, the more we can do to get out of our bubbles and see more than what's being fed to us, the better.
Yes. And to see it as agenda driven. That media is agenda driven.
Right.
I would love to be able to trust the media, but we can't, because it's made up of people, and people can't help but be subjective because they're people.
Yeah. I mean, just like, I love that Lady Gaga video we just posted on our Facebook page. I mean, she talks about, it's all about divide and conquer. And, as long as we're kept from connecting with each other, we're not, as people, as citizens, going to have the power to shape the country that we want. It'll be shaped by the privileged few who want to keep their power. So. Yeah.
Well, I'm thankful for our connection, Kelly. And in times like this, when there's a lot of unrest and upheaval and fear going on, I'm thankful that I can trust you as my friend. I can trust you to speak honestly to me. I can trust you to listen to my heart. And I can trust that even after a conversation like this, that we can still have a good connection.
I feel the same, Heidi. And I love that I can trust that I can share with you things that you disagree with and that you will not jump on me, which I think is very important. So,
Yes.
good talking with you again.
Great to see you. Love you, friend.
Love you.